Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey, Stafford here with you. I'm joined as always by Rory O'Neill, and we've a show in two acts here today. Starting with football, so Ciaran Whelan and Damian Lawlor with us. How are you, lads?
Good, Mikey. Very good, Mikey.
And just in the second half of the show, we'll discuss hurling with Dennis Walsh of the Sunday Times and with Anthony Daly. I think it's fair to say, lads, the football championship proper kicks off today, and that's not to do any disrespect to the matches that there were last weekend, but it does feel like we've got our first first couple of blockbusters this weekend. And I should say notable mention to New York, obviously, who scared the wits out of Sligo. And New Sligo had their first ever under-20 Connacht title last night. Congrats to them. That's
amazing achievement, yeah.
A good news story for a county that needs it and a GA community that needs it after the tragic death of Red Oak Murphy.
Big time.
But we'll start further north, Damian, and the Armagh Donegal match has had quite the build-up. There was the league finale, and how that wound out, how that ended up, and has really only finished up yesterday or the night before, Damian, with the news that Ciaran Whelan is actually now the only Armagh man who's likely to miss Sunday's game, with Stephen Campbell and Aidan Nugent joining Rian O'Neill in the burst for freedom. And we understand that Neil McGee and Oran McFadden Ferry are taking their medicine. So Armagh fought the law, and it paid off.
Yeah, from a reporter's point of view, Mikey, the last couple of days, we're tough going. There was a serious information vacuum. Word came out the night before last. What day is Thursday? So I think word came out Tuesday night that the Armagh players had got off at central appeals level. So you know what happened. The fracas took place at the end of the league game in Letterkenny. Players were brought forward, mentioning match official Paddy Nealon's report. At the end of the day, Rian O'Neill was brought into the mix by the CCCC. He got off in technicality. Straight away, the Donegal, two lads, McGee and McFadden Ferry, they took their medicine, they accepted the ban, and they didn't go any further with it. Armagh contested the three charges: Stephen Campbell, Aidan Nugent, and Ciaran Whelan. And basically, word came out on Tuesday night that all three had got off and were clear to play, which would be a colossal advantage for the team. But I just couldn't get any clarity on that Tuesday night. So I as much clarity as I wanted. So I spent literally most of yesterday working that story, and it turned out that Ciaran Whelan wasn't cleared to play. He had withdrawn his case the week before hearings level, and he now misses out. The chances are he's injured anyway, but he misses out on Sunday's game while the other two are free to play. Meanwhile, the Donegal players, they missed their window of appeal, and they won't play. And Donegal had no comment to make on the matter yesterday. Very few people had any comment to make on the matter yesterday, to be honest about it. But it just took a bit of digging, but we got there in the end in terms of Mackin now misses out at the weekend. And a new focus now comes on the referee's match report, and particularly the rule contributing to a melee. Because the word I was getting back was the charge against the Armagh players was not specific enough. Another source told me there wasn't enough detail in it, but the law, the actual rule guide doesn't require for a description of how they contribute to a melee. So how can you not feel sorry for a referee here? They're not legal experts, but I think going forward, they're going to have their match reports word tight if the cases are going to stand up through the disciplinary system, Mikey, and that appears to be what's not happening at the minute.
Yeah, Ciaran, it does seem kind of mad. The rule should be the rule, and however, as long as the referee states, what the infraction was, surely that should be enough. The GA are trying to clamp down on melees, schmozzles, all-ins, whatever you're having yourself, whatever you want to call them. And this kind of news this week, and I'm not saying that the Armagh fellas maybe they're getting off as maybe they're rightly getting off and they were innocent as charged. But if the GA want to clamp down on this, A, this isn't going to help because everyone's going to appeal everything, and B, referees are they're just going to stop trying to penalise this stuff because they'll know it's just not going to be not worth the hassle.
Yeah, I think, Mike, when you strip it back, you got to wonder: is there a fundamental problem with the rule book and how we go and implement the rules? Because you see in other sports, this just doesn't arise. If someone gets suspended, they're suspended. It's end of story. And I think it's going back to the word that Damian said, technicality. You know, there's so many avenues to pursue a technicality because maybe the whole disciplinary system is so complex, you know. And like, I even go back to the Battle of Omagh where we weren't in the referee's report. We were cited by video, I think 10 of us at the time, and suspensions were brought forward by the CCC. And, you know, once the Liga people get involved in it,
should they be allowed into it, Whelo? Should they be allowed in? Is it overly judicious? Like, should they actually be allowed in?
I think that's fundamentally the problem, Rory, because once they get involved in it, they are looking to expose a technicality within the whole process, right? And I distinctly remember that time, you know, we obviously got all legal advice in terms of how we were to approach the process. The suspensions were brought by the CCC. We went into, I think it's now, there's so many bloody
acronyms.
I think it was the CAC that we went to make the appeal to. But there was one rule to say that the CCC could not interfere with the CAC's process. And I remember at the time being charged. I think the rule at that time was bringing the game into disrepute rather than contributing to a melee. So I was given a distinct time in my letter as to when I brought the game into disrepute. And we were advised, again, it was trying to trip the GA up in terms of the process, to go in and ask the CAC, where did I bring the game into disrepute, and ask them to point that out. And in order to point that out, to bring a member of the CCC who had originally brought the charges in to show where we brought the game into disrepute. Straight away, we had a breach of technicality. Boom, case gone, and everyone on the same basis. So, like, I think I know the DRA was brought in to try and stop people from going down the route of the High Court and bring a legal finality to it. But the bottom line here is, you know, the GA, yes, they're trying to clamp down. They want to go to zero tolerance. They're asking referees to do that. But the reality is probably a high percentage of lads will get off on a technicality because the process is so complex. And bringing the league of people into it, they will tie amateur people in knots, you know what I mean? And I think that's ultimately leading to the reason why the players are getting off. I think Donegal probably looked at this and said, you know, Neil McGee's not going to play. Or McFerry, I thought he's had a very, very good league campaign, and he is a bit of a loss to them. But they probably thought they were less damaged and took a bit of a punt to accept the suspensions in good faith, in the hope that Armagh might do the same. But Armagh were never going to do that. And even, you know, even the contrast between, you know, if you get suspended in a league, you miss a league, it's a big deal. You'll kind of just sit back and maybe take it in. But the fact the consequences were around a first round championship game, Armagh, Donegal, massive impact on the rest of the year. Armagh were always going to appeal. And you know, they brought a strong legal team with them. So like the saying, if you have a good solicitor, you have a better chance of getting off.
Yeah.
The Johnny Cochran did
in the sporting environment, you know.
Yeah, I'm glad you told us about your Battle of Omagh, your loophole there, because I was about to praise you for the fact how you were the first man of 16 to stand up after another shameful scene you were involved in Parnell Park with Meath, and how you accepted your suspension there, mainly because you were only going to miss one Leinster match.
Yeah, but Mikey, you know what the point there was, and there is a kind of a backstory to that. But again, it comes back to people decide is the players or the management that kind of decide on the route that generally it is the managers. It generally is the management team that will decide, yes, we're going to collectively appeal it, everyone's going to appeal. That day against Meath, I remember going to Pillar the following night and saying, Monday night at the train, I said, Pillar, listen, I'm not going down this route again because, you know, it's guilty. We were guilty. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't. It was very hard to stand over and defend, trying to get off. So yeah, being through it on both sides, but you know, yeah, it comes back to if the whole. I think the whole rule book is so open to interpretation and challenge around technicalities that it makes it very, very difficult for these who are probably charged to respond to these technicalities and obviously committee members. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, well, we might leave it at that because I don't want it to overshadow.
And just one other point, Mikey. It's desperately undermining for referees.
Yeah,
you know, we have a big problem in sport across the board in terms of refereeing recruitment. I mean, if you look at the refereeing appointments this weekend, if I'm not mistaken, Maurice Deegan is heading up to do that Donegal Armagh match. Maurice Deegan's on the go about 25 years, like, you know, so like. And look, fine ref, loves a smile, but like, I'm not so sure. Like, where are the good refs coming? And this is half the problem. Fellas are looking at this. I mean, I'm not going to get any backup here. The rule book is obviously, you know, flagrantly, you know, behind the times and out of date. Far too open to interpretation. I make a big decision in terms of penalising fellas. I thought David Goff took an admirable stance there at that time, but apparently he got bogged down in a load of admin as well. So fellas are. Like, referees are probably saying to themselves, no, from here on in, is it worth my while?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. So, look, unfortunately, it's a tale almost as old as time for us. So we will move on to the match itself.
It adds a bit of health spice to the game, though, doesn't it?
Certainly does.
It does that. And, Damian, it's an intriguing match for a number of reasons. Obviously, there is the precursor. There's what went before, so that's obviously going to add that bit of spice. And beyond that, there's also just the form of the two teams because, you know, Armagh were kind of the buzz team at the start of the league because they beat Dublin before we knew that everybody was going to beat Dublin, and so that was good. But they petered out a little bit. Whereas Donegal, all through the league, we've been talking about it, how inconsistent they were, and you know, but they drew with Mayo, they beat Kildare, they beat Tyrone, they lost to Monaghan and Dublin, and then they beat Armagh, and they finished fourth in the league. So, you know, despite everybody thinking their style of play is outdated, they're terribly inconsistent. By judging by the league table, they're the fourth best team in the country.
and that's it. Like, and with the likes of Paddy McBrearty on the field and Michael Murphy and Ryan McHugh, they're capable of anything. Like Ciaran Mackin's going to be a colossal loss, first of all. He's going to be a colossal loss. The fact that the game is on in Ballybofey, that's another massive kudos for Donegal. Like, they're so hard to beat there. Like, it's going back an awful long time since they were beaten there in the league. In terms of
Monaghan beat them there in the league this year, Damo, for the first time, I think, in 12 years or something.
And I was going to say, I forgot about that game. Before that, it was so, I remember, like, it was so long, and they probably got draws or won games that they probably could have lost previously. The general point I'd make is what Ciaran was saying there about the spice going into this game. Well, Donegal won't need much to raise their gallop. They have not always been consistent. They're an infuriating team to follow, I would imagine. They're capable of anything on the day, but they don't always produce it. The times I saw Armagh play during the league, they look spectacular at times, but I'm just wondering, was it too early? So I would just get the feeling, just to back up what you were saying there, Mikey, in recent weeks, I get the feeling that the tide has turned slightly. I think that Donegal, they've found a kind of a level that they can build upon. On paper, at home, they are going to be very, very hard to beat. I think Armagh will wonder when, if not this year. But I think the tide has turned a little bit. I think the events of the past few days won't harm Donegal at all. I would imagine the Donegal County Board got awful flack for not going ahead and appealing their two players as well. But they stood to their guns, and I think you was talking to the Donegal board yesterday, no comment to make on the matter, but they said that they comment after the weekend, and I think they'll have to comment on the field and you know, use Ballybofey as being a fortress again.
Yeah. Whelo, the Armagh's form, as I said, was eye-catching at the start, and then you kind of look at the teams, you know, how they did against teams, I suppose, who would fit the Donegal bill to some extent, you know, who run the ball, basically, and, you know, they drew with Monaghan, they lost to Mayo, and they lost to Donegal. So do you think teams are seeing this as the kind of the way to go at Armagh, perhaps, is to run at them, and maybe Donegal's slightly, what we might say, outmoded style of play might actually be the way to go against this Armagh team?
Yeah, possibly, but I definitely think from an Armagh perspective, like the last couple of years, they were so open. They were very exciting watching. They played attractive football, but they left themselves so open at the back. If you remember against Monaghan last year, Monaghan carved them open. Previous year in the win, Ireland, Donegal made absolute dog's dinner of them in the Ulster Championship. And definitely, I think Armagh set out their stall to kind of restructure their team and defend that scoring zone. And they've only conceded 3 goals in the league. They've been solid at the back. And then they've had to mix it up in the terms of their counter play. They will go long by foot if they get that opportunity to get this alternative. They have to carry and be more patient. So I definitely think Armagh for me are on an upward curve and have improved greatly compared to where they were. And they're coming against a team against Donegal, which you just, Damian touching there, you just can't trust them, Mikey. You just can't. I saw them in Ballybofey against Tyrone on the back of having watched them against Kerry in the league, where they were just awful. Now I get that you can kind of nearly park that because no one wins in Killarney, long journey down, just weren't tuned in out of it. But at half time in the Tyrone game, I was actually thinking the body language was poor. There was a lot of negativity up around Donegal about the whole team, management, everything. And then they came out in the second half and just turned on this brilliant performance and beat Tyrone, and you're left kind of flabbergasted. So they have that ability to turn it on. And even coming back to it, like I would challenge their mental strength to a certain degree, because they've collapsed against Cavan, they've collapsed in Super 8 games. The Michael Murphy factor, I know it's always talked about, but when he's on the field with them, they're a different team. He even came on at half time against Monaghan after giving Monaghan a 6-7 point lead, and he played in around the middle and he's delivering quick early ball into the forward line, and they look like now unfortunately at some point you wanted Michael Murphy in midfield and Michael Murphy also receiving the ball on the full forward line. That's the downside, but I still think he's hugely influential in terms of when he's on the field. He's their leader, and I think Donegal need other fellas to start stepping into that breach when he's not around, because he is susceptible to injuries and all that sort of stuff. So it's an inconsistent Donegal team with massive amount of ability against an Armagh team, for me, on the rise. So it's fascinating. I think it's going to be a cracker of a game. For me, I just think Armagh's time. I think Armagh just might edge it, because I think Donegal are just patchy, and they might, if they look back, even the Cavan game, if they manage to close down Murphy, rotate markers, manage to close down Ryan McHugh, take out a couple of the big Donegal influential factors, which they're quite capable of doing. And they've Rian O'Neill back on the edge of the square, Rory Grugan, who's playing great football. Nugent is obviously back in, he's supplementing on the forward line. I just think Armagh could just edge it, but it'd be very close.
Okay, Rory, you want to call it?
Yeah, I think, I went for Armagh to win Ulster, and I'm not going to diverge from that now at this point. They haven't beaten Donegal in the championship since 2010. They have a terrible record in the Ulster Championship in general under Ciaran McGeeney. I think they were very impressive at times during the league. I think Whelo mentioned a very good word there, trust. Can you trust Donegal? I think you can trust Armagh more, and I'm just going to go for Armagh to eke out a tight win in Ballybofey for a famous victory.
Damian?
McCall and O'Reen could be crucial there, and I agree. When I see Michael Murphy playing, they're way steadier, and he's a kick-out option. He's an option on the edge of the square, but he's a playmaker as well. He just calms things down. As inconsistent as they are, and I've seen Armagh close quarters, Mikey, with Kieran Donny, the difference he's made to the intensity and closing up the back. I just have it in my gut to go for Donegal this time. And I'm so impressed with watching Armagh play football in the league. They're a breath of fresh air. As Ciaran says, they can run at you, but they can use the diagonal foot pass as well, which is beautiful to watch and rare to watch. But I'm going to go with Donegal this time, principally because of the happenings of this week and the home venue. I know they were beaten by Monaghan, but that was an oddity, a rarity. I'm going to go with Donegal, but probably against the form line, I know.
Okay, well, I'm going to go for I backed Derry to win the Ulster Championship, so I think any predictions I make in Ulster this year are going to be coloured by that.
Derry?
Anyway, I have, yeah, not with money, just with my reputation as a top football tipster. We haven't time to dwell on the other. All right, Whelo. We haven't time to dwell on the other game in Ulster, but I will say it is also fascinating. Obviously, up in Carrigan Park, another game that had a bit of spice in the build-up in terms of the venue. Just in a word, lads, who do you see winning this one? Antrim are ranked higher, but Cavan had a strong league. Whelo, how do you see it?
I think home advantage will be critical here. I think Anna McGinley, Stephen O'Neill have Antrim in good shape. Probably not to could have been in the promotion chase. Armagh or Cavan, on the other hand, lingering in Division 4, may not have the matches under their belt at that intensity level. Mickey Graham's there a few years. I just think there's more for Antrim here. I think Antrim could be a surprise and get a home victory. Yeah.
Okay, Rory.
Yeah, I think Antrim as well. I'd go along with that. I think Antrim have a good, just the fact that the home advantage thing is a big thing for them. I think I was very unimpressed, I'll be honest, with Cavan in the Division 4 league final. Even though they won the game, I actually thought Tipperary were the better side on the day. And I was more from them, Now, they are a very good championship side generally under Mickey Graham, and obviously they're also champions from 2 years ago. They're on, obviously, a good side of the draw if they were to get over this. But no, I give Antrim a tight nod.
Okay. And yourself, Damian?
Yeah, when Antrim lost Ricky Johnson and Oisin Kerr, and that's your fullback and your goalkeeper, and I was wondering at that point what was going to happen. But look, I think they've got enough options there on the squad. I think Antrim are playing to a higher standard this year, just on league form. I agree with Rory. Cavan were poor in both games against Tipperary. Tip should have won the final, and while Cavan can turn it on in the championship, I'll go for Antrim this time. They battle hard for Corrigan Park, a bit like the Sligo 20s did last night for Markovich Park, and they have to go and back it up now.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm being contrarian. I'm going to say Cavan are going to win, clearly. Okay, we'll move over to Connacht then. The game, no, I wouldn't say it's the game of the weekend. I think we've explained precisely why Armagh Donegal should have equal billing, but Mayo Galway, it always has a certain je ne sais quoi about it, Rory. And but some people might argue that the little bit of the air has been let out of the balloon by the fact that they both lost league finals in the build-up, but I'm not sure that really matters too much, does it?
I don't think so. Not when these two meet. No, I was just looking there this morning. It's their 10th year in a row meeting in the championship, which is extraordinary for two teams playing at that kind of level. Mayo obviously dominating the fixture over the course of the last decade. No, that's not going to have much bearing.
In predominantly terrible games of football.
Yeah, and it might not. Now, I've heard some people say that it might be equally cagey as well on Sunday. I'm not so sure if I'd go along with that. I had a chat with Whelo about this before. Losing on Sunday doesn't nearly come with the same level of jeopardy as it used to. I mean, whoever gets beaten, okay, they might end up having to go away to an Armagh or a Donegal in the first round qualifier, but they could equally catch on against Limerick or Cork, So I don't think that would exactly, hold too much fear for them. So I think on that basis alone, and hopefully a lot of the injuries clear up on both sides of the camp, probably more on Mayo's side. I think it could be a more open game than we have seen. And as I said, if injuries do clear up, particularly for Mayo, because there's still a lot of question marks around Paddy Durkin, Oisin Mullen. I think Jordan Flynn is a goner completely. Not too sure what the story is with Rob Henley. Dermot O'Connor, I think, is still touch and go, although apparently he has trained over the last.
Ciaran O'Connor has no match fitness.
Yeah, so. Look, if you were picking full strength 15s for both, you'd probably fancy Mayo, and they've probably got the more experienced manager. Obviously, home advantage should come for something. And unlike the Cork hurlers, I assume the Mayo footballers will have been given the opportunity to train in Castlebar over the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, I think, look, it's going to be... yeah, let it go.
Let it go, Rory. Let it go.
Yeah, but... so... Yeah, I think it's like I'm hoping for a very open contest. Let's see what we get.
Yeah, that's the thing, Whelo. You look at these two teams. Mayo tend to be involved in exciting matches when they come up against a team of a similar quality to them. It's just the nature of their style of play. Galway are seen as kind of like the great entertainers, whether a lot of that is historical kind of residue, but like they have some of the most exciting footballers in the country, like Conroy, Shane Walsh, etc. Yet when they play each other, there just seems to be, like, not every game, but like the ones that stick in your mind, they don't stick in your mind because they've been awful. It's kind of funny, like style make fights and all that, but they just doesn't work with these two.
Yeah, they have a tendency to cancel each other. Listen, I think it's an interesting clash. Rory touching there. I think if they're at full strength, I would definitely fancy Mayo, because Mayo, you know, I think a lot has been read into their Croke Park collapse a few weeks ago, and they didn't have that power from the half back line coming forward against Kerry. They're missing too many personnel. It took away from the game that they usually play. But you know, coming up against Galway, I think Galway to me are, and probably on the flip side, maybe Galway are a little bit coming into this game over. And as Galway still have to answer questions from me. I think if you look at Division 2, they had a brilliant game against Derry with a half the blue Derry out of the water. Apart from that, I think the standard within Division 2 was a lot lower than what May competing against. I still think they're quite open and vulnerable at the back. They've done nothing really to demonstrate to me that they're ready to take the step to the next level. Sunday might change that. But like on that basis, I still see Mayo, like a lot depends on the personnel. If they get the Dermot O'Connor back, or they get Oisin Mullen back, obviously Jordan Flynn is a loss. But if they get a decent enough team on the field, and Mayo play with their high energy and pace, and I think there will be a bit of a kickback following that league final, I think Mayo will have enough. Like I think one of the challenges for Galway, and I think like Kevin Walsh used to allude to it, and Kevin Walsh took a lot of stick when he was Galway manager, but you know, he set them up strong in terms of, he talks about lane 2, 3 and 4 and closing down that centre defence. And he was very successful against Mayo playing that type of game plan. And Mayo don't like coming up against a kind of a system like that. And at times, where if you play man to man with them, apart from Kerry, they'll put in a high energy game, squeeze the life out of teams. So for me, I think Galway have to tweak it a bit and adapt, and maybe learn from the Kerry. But so if Galway tweak it, they have a chance.
How do you see it going, Damian?
Yeah, look, I think Ciaran summarised it brilliantly there, Mikey. I look forward to hearing that back. But there's a few points I'd like to make. What Ciaran was saying about Kevin Walsh and the grids he uses across the field, he did a great job. He set Galway up very defensively, and he got panned for it because Galway are the kicking kings of Gaelic football traditionally. The challenge now is in that period, you had Shane Walsh and Damien Comer back behind their own halfway line too often, in my opinion. And I know Shane Walsh can strike from deep as well, but the challenge is to get that set up right at the back, but have that potent threat up front as well. I'd imagine Pádraig O'Hora will take Comer, and I think Paul Conroy will be marshalled by Matty Ruan. From there, then it comes down to who's fit and who's not. In my information, anyway, Brendan Harrison is gone, David McBride is gone, Jordan Flynn is gone, and Fionn McDonough, he could be under pressure too. Rob Hennelly is under pressure, Owen McLaughlin's under pressure, and Brian Walsh is under pressure. Obviously, Tommy Conroy's gone from early doors. That's a huge one. On the plus side, this is where the game will hinge, in my opinion. If the likes of Paddy Durkin can get back in, it would be huge. If Oisin Mullen and Dermot O'Connor can get back in, it would be massive as well. I would feel at home on the new surface, which they got to have a training camp on very recently. They had a whole weekend there. I would think that Mayo simply play to a higher level. And if they have enough first choice players on the field, they should be able for Galway.
Okay. Rory, are you also tipping my tip for the All-Ireland to lose?
Yeah, no, I think Mayo. I do. I think if Mayo can get even half to the personnel on the field, I think they'll win the game. The one thing about Shane Walsh, though, for me, right? And look, I know we don't have time to get into it here. Like, he's an incredible footballer. You know, inside of the foot, outside of the foot, left foot, right foot, some amazing skills, control it, double hop, or this dummy hop ball. But has he ever actually dominated a game? You know, in the way that like Clifford just goes out and says, "Look, I'm just going to take over here, and I'm going to rack up 2-6, and I'm going to kill the game dead." Or, you know, like in the way Michael Donnellan may have for Galway in the past, or way Pádraig Joyce. I mean, we've seen loads of flashes of brilliance from Shane Walsh throughout his career. Has he, you know, I mean, I don't know, has he delivered on that potential?
He's definitely become more of a team player over the past couple of seasons. And I feel too that at the start, like he was probably going for his own score. He put huge pressure on himself, I would imagine, to demonstrate that he could do the job for Galway. Caught between a couple of systems there as well.
Yeah,
Rory.
that's true. That is true.
You know, and maybe now I suppose, this day I still have him down as being a kid, to be honest with you. And 28, I suppose. Yeah, you have to be doing probably a certain consistent standard every single week. But
I know he was, and I know he was taken out of it as well, probably. Quite dangerously last year. But anyway, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Just very briefly, then. Everyone knows the love I give the Leinster Football Championship on this podcast. Louth are playing Carlow, Wexford are playing Offaly, Wicklow are playing Laois. Anybody disagree with me saying that we're going to get a win for Louth, a win for Offaly, and a win for I'm going to say Wicklow?
I disagree with you, Mikey. I think Wexford at home. I think Offaly have a good few injuries by all accounts.
Yeah,
I give Wexford a really, really good chance. They're like Wexford. I know they had a terrible league, but they always produce. Look what they did to Dublin last year in the championship. It's the best team that we've ever seen. I know maybe a team
they only lost 3. Rory, you're right in a way. They lost 3 games very narrowly in the league, and Offaly are a little bit upset at the minute, I would say. And I think there is a chance there for sure. If you're playing the league form, it's going to be Offaly, but it could throw up something new there. I think that Shane Roach would be happy enough with what he has to work with, despite the results not going great for him.
Wexford's the only one I would see maybe not going to form.
Well, Carlow would struggle with the S&C. Like, they have a brand new squad, really. 15 players got their debut at least in the league, I think. And the S&C of Louth, they'll tuck in, they'll counter-attack at pace. I'd imagine there'll be a couple of levels above that. The Laois game will be interesting. But look, I think Laois and Wicklow. Sorry, it is Laois and Wicklow, isn't it?
Correct.
And I think Wicklow obviously changed their management team, but Billy Sheehan will be probably unhappy with the league in a few results, but they could have gone differently. It wouldn't have taken a whole lot to switch that. So that'll be a fascinating game. That's probably up for it as well. But you imagine Laois would pull through, and you'd imagine Wexford could give Offaly a shock. That could be the one to watch.
And the winners of Wexford Offaly get the grand old prize of 6
Dublin.
Days later to play Dublin.
And the build up to the Wicklow game has been interesting, lads. I don't know if you saw this. There's a bit of confusion around their senior football championship draw when Donard Glen were given a bye into the second round when it should have been the 4 semi-finalists, and so poor old Rathnew, who would be pretty serious about their football, would be one way of putting it. Rathnew were overlooked as last year's semi-finalists, so they've had to redo the championship draw because they put the wrong 4 teams into the in with a bye. So that was interesting, I'd say. I can imagine a few phone calls pinging around now after that one. Okay, I think we've sorted all that out now. Wexford are going to win. That's good news. I can't see it myself, but all my optimism is expended on hurling. The poor footballers get the half glass empty side of me. Whelo and Damian, we're going to let you guys go, and we will bring in our hurling men in a couple of moments. Good luck. Thanks, lads.
He hits it, it's over the bar! Oh, holy Moses!
Welcome back. Time to talk hurling with Anthony Daly and Denis Walsh of the Sunday Times. How you doing, gents?
Good, Mike. Good, thanks.
Good stuff. We spent the start of the football show discussing disciplinary matters, so we'll get on to Tommy Dunn later. I don't want to start the hurling with disciplinary matters as well, but we'll get there now when we're talking about to be clear. But I think the only place to start really, Denis, is in Gaelic Grounds on Saturday night. Limerick v Waterford. In many people's minds, this could be the first of 3 championship meetings between these two teams. So I think Jackie Tyrrell mentioned here on Tuesday, if you're Liam Cahill, do you show your best hand on Saturday night, or do you keep something in reserve?
Well, that's the thing. Like, that's the kind of quandary now for. I mean, people talk about the league being kind of shadow boxing. Like, there's an element now in the provincial round robin that it's almost as if once you qualified for the All-Ireland series, do you really want to be in the provincial final? This kind of stuff. I mean, Limerick had this issue a couple of years ago where they lost a tip in Thurles and didn't play their best 15 maybe, and people were saying, crikey, are they ducking and diving? Are they trying to get in as a third place team? I mean, this thing has been going on for weeks, that Limerick would prefer to qualify from Munster as a third place team, not have the month off, have a couple of other games to play. They've all the players to do it. So you kind of wonder, it'll be really interesting to see, what level of intensity. Now, the only thing I would say, and crikey, Anthony would know far better as a manager himself, but like, how many times can Waterford afford to lose to Limerick? They've had a good few bangs in the head already last couple of years. They went, bald headed from 3 times in championship since 2020, since Liam Cahill came in. And they need to beat them when Limerick can't come back, So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But like Waterford definitely can't afford to go up there and get a hiding either, or have some kind of a dispiriting, demoralising experience. So it'll be fascinating. Like there'll be a massive crowd. Limerick can't afford to be holding back, I don't think. So yeah. It's interesting. Like there's so many different dynamics with the round robin than we would have expected when this thing was first introduced.
Yeah, the last two championship defeats Dalo have been by 11 points, so there's symmetry there. But I think playing their full strength team and with the experience they've gained in the last 2 years, we may still think Limerick are the favourites, but are they 11-point favourites at this stage now? Has that been a bit unfair to Waterford? Surely we've seen improvement in Waterford in the last few months, however much stake or stock we want to put in the league.
Yeah, and do you know the other thing with that there, Mike, as well, is that I suppose in the back of my mind anyway, I'd have seen that kind of Waterford nearly gave Limerick the most to think about over the last couple of years. Okay, there was a couple of other games like the Galway semi-final and that, but they did give them a good rattle, particularly that Munster final in Thurles when the place was empty and we were there, and we were kind of just lucky to be there obviously on the day, but you could see that Waterford were building something really strong, and yet Limerick have gone on then to win those two All-Irelands, beating them again in the final. So yeah, I think it's a more important game for Liam Cahill and his men. I think Denis's point there that they have to beat Limerick at some stage, and I think Kylie will have. He has gone to Cork as well and won. Like Waterford have won a home game that kind of people expected them to win. There was a few questions about Limerick's league form and all that, like where were they? Would they know on the basis of a few challenge matches or in-house matches? And I suppose they emphatically answered most of those questions last Sunday. So there's probably a little bit more pressure on Waterford to come up and deliver and keep the trajectory on the upward curve and to keep that. They've won the league. Why can't you go and win every game, win the Munster title? And I think Liam would like to keep that going. So I think they might be even hungrier. Limerick will be down Kyle Hayes now, definitely when you come off with a twinge like and a hamstring like that, you're probably not going to be playing 6 days later. And Shamie Flanagan won't be ready, obviously. So I don't know. I just have a feeling it might take on a life of its own then in the back of my mind as well, that you're there in the Gaelic Grounds, all the home support. They haven't seen them playing championships since we got rid of the round robin in Limerick. And the buzz can take over as well, players, and they're very familiar with each other. So hopefully it bubbles up and it really turns in a cracker. And I definitely think Mike, they'll meet at least twice in the year anyway, if not the third time.
Yeah. And Rory, the Waterford, you kind of say, should they go hell for them? They can afford to an extent, because we've been banging on about it all spring. The squad depth they have, the option to start Jamie Barron and Austin Gleeson this Saturday night if they fancy. That's not. There's two reasonable changes to be able to make to your 15 for a start if you want to rotate a little bit.
Yeah, and Dave, you might see a little bit of rotate. There's not to be borrowing a phrase from another sport or an example from another sport, but there is a sense of Liverpool v Man City in the FA Cup semi-final with this and that. Like, it's a precursor to probably a more important clash maybe down the line that they could meet again with, and that's why given the frenetic nature, I know the following week there's a bit of a break for teams, so that's where management does come into it, trying to manage this. I mean, look at what Limerick, as we have seen, have we all questioned their form last year in the league. They timed their run brilliantly, and then they got into the championship and no one laid a glove. Looks like they've done the exact same again this time round. They more or less discarded the league again and decided, right, we're going to put all our eggs into the one basket. And we saw the response they gave last Sunday. So I think if Kyle Hayes falls out, if Jamie Barron comes in, if Austin Gleeson comes in, I still think we'll get a good contest. The one thing that is noticeable for both sides is there's a distinct lack of goals when they have met over the last 2 years anyway. I think there's only one goal scored in their last 3 championship meetings. It's very unusual.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, given Waterford's propensity for goals at the minute and their ability to get them, I think that could be a key factor on Sunday or Saturday night, sorry. And I think Denis's point is well made in that at some point Waterford are probably going to have to say to themselves, look, if we're actually going to engage these guys in a proper rivalry, we're going to have to get over the line at some point against them to try and just at least introduce some level of parity into a so-called rivalry. And it's a good opportunity. I think I don't think there's the same level of pressure on them that there was going into last Sunday. I think I do believe that there was a level of pressure on them last Sunday in Tipperary because they were expected to win. Waterford don't beat Tipperary that often in the championship, so for them to win as favourites, I thought brought a little bit of baggage, which I think probably invested itself to a certain degree in the tentative nature of their first half display, certainly. And I think that pressure's off to a certain degree. You know, they will believe that they're better than the two teams that are left, which is Clare and Cork. And is it a free shot? Maybe it is, you know, but at some point I think it is the case that they are going to have to push back, and maybe Saturday is the chance to do it.
Yeah, let's say they go for Denis, which we hope they will. And they will go for it. Some say they're not going to throw the game, but like if they are going to say, as you say, put down this statement win, Waterford gave Limerick the roadmap, shall we say, against Cork in the league final. How they managed, we've discussed it obviously at length. They targeted the centre of the Cork defence, where I think like most people would argue you could land a 7-4-7, and that's what they did. They ran the ball, they scored 5 goals. That's brilliant. That won't work against Limerick. So everybody's question is, you know, Limerick have one way of playing and it's brilliant, and it's your Swiss Army knife because it works against everybody. Waterford obviously had one way of playing against Cork, which is probably not going to be their approach against Limerick. So they have to change things up. We don't doubt that they have the personnel of the manager to do that. So it's just going to be intriguing to see what their approach is, I suppose.
Yeah, Mr. O'Connor, colleague of mine and Dalo's colleague and friend as well, worked out that Waterford, by his reckoning, created 14 goal scoring chances against Limerick over the course of a couple of, I mean, maybe the 3 championship matches, and just didn't take them. But like they did actually create the chances. So they're probably, this season, they've been more clinical and more ruthless in their execution. So if they were able to create those chances against Limerick on days when they were well beaten, you can imagine that they're trying to get to the next level and create the chances and take them. No, obviously that's easier said than done. I actually watched the game last Sunday from the city and in the park, rolling onto the press box, and even the Shane Barrett chance, which was a brilliant save by Nicky Quaid. Jesus, he was under such pressure hitting that ball. Really, like it was a super first touch, and still he was under pressure hitting the flipping thing. And
still created a few, though, Denis, like Jack O'Connor's and the block before half time.
Yeah, and I thought there was maybe 2 other chances in the second half. The Cork were playing towards the city end, where if they had if they had played an extra pass, that there was a goal chance on. That they just took a point when it was on, and either had the confidence or the kind of ruthlessness to play the chance to extra pass. Now Waterford have a different mentality, and they've different kind of forwards too, guys with more power and can break a tackle or not afraid to take on. Like when you see some of the Cork fellas being spun around, like John Melrick, who was really game now and did his level best, not the most powerful guy in the world. 2 or 3 times he tried to break tackles and was spun around. Like Waterford have guys who can potentially at least break those tackles. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if Waterford in that Munster final in 2020, the one that Dalo was talking about there behind closed doors, Limerick had 1 shot for a goal in the whole match. It wasn't even on their minds scoring goals. Scoring goals are much more on their minds now. Like this will not be a no-goal game, in my opinion. Like there will be goals in this game on Saturday night. And
I'd say, Mike, on that as well, like that there is a change in the Limerick, like saying Limerick played the same way. Like there's a lot of subtleties I'm seeing anyway that Mr. Kinnerk is tweaking. Have you ever seen Declan Hannon up the pitch as often? Have you ever seen Barry Nash as advanced as he is? There's subtle little changes coming in there the whole time. And for me, the huge thing with Limerick was the performance of the midfield. Like the midfield just rolled back to last year because they had no form really from the league, either of them. And I just think if Tom Morrissey can get back to his best and Flanagan and Kyle get back involved, it's just that he's tweaked a few things. But if Tom Morrissey can get back to his best and the 2 are fit, the options they have are frightening again. Yeah, absolutely. And a word you mentioned there, Dennis, just a word, Dalo, on the importance of the goalkeepers and Nicky Quaid in particular, who often a goalkeeper playing in a dominant team, you know, doesn't always get his dues, but hurling is obviously different, and there are chances. Granted, they might be snapshots, you mightn't have a lot of time, but
his show reel over the last couple of years when he has had to he's pulling off saves now that, you know, the great goalkeepers of the 90s were lauded and are still talked about to this day for kind of this kind of stuff. And Quaid, I'm not saying he doesn't get his dues, he does, but his importance to this team, the security he brings, it can't be underestimated.
Yeah, and there's been so many references, Mike, to Declan Hannon as the kind of quarterback, as to bring in another sport again. But like, really, it's Nicky Quaid. Like, I mean, there's a bit of an argument that who's the best shot stopper in the country, himself or Murph. You know, they're two brilliant. You know, never be say the ball's in the net with the two of them. And yet, I think Nicky probably shades it on his distribution. Like, I mean, he's just so adept. Like, but I believe, look, there's no real. The goalkeeping coach is why is his name escaped me now? From former goalie from Adair.
Timmy Whelan.
Yeah, Timmy. I believe like himself and Timmy are inside in the Gaelic Grounds at 5:15 every evening, like before training, and you know, staying back afterwards. And like that link up play he has with the half forward line, and the way he can ping, like Gerard Hegarty's a great fetcher of the ball, and the touch was back totally in sync, like obviously that Sunday, but the trajectory of the ball and the size of Hago, and he's reaching out, like it's nearly impossible for the wing back. And that's what Quaid brings you. Like, his delivery is just absolutely top class, and he's so experienced now as well. He's the perfect guy to have. Say if you ask Mike Casey, who was really playing his first big game since the 2019 semi-final, who do you want behind him? I'd say Mikey's Nicky keep me in check. And you know, I'd say that like he's a massive leader for me. He's like Kylie's on-game leader, like, you know, on-field, you know, general, if you like, right there watching, observing, watching, and keeping them all in check.
Yeah. And Dalo, the last time they met, was the Bales ahead, eh? Like, was that you? Is it true that you were the fella driving the truck, no?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, with me driving the truck was one thing, but me sitting down minding my own business, watching the All-Ireland semi-final with a Jack and whatever they call him, hoodie that one of the girls had brought back from Spain for me.
And getting the phone call.
Which happened to have a Union Jack that I didn't even know was on it, threw it on me over a T-shirt, taxi to the match, might have a pint or two, get a phone call in from you, say, Dalo, where are you?
I need you.
I'm here in the Cusack.
40 minutes filling.
Get over here.
Yeah.
Oh man, the abuse I got on Twitter over the Union Jack the day of the All-Ireland semi-final.
Anyway, something else that was getting a lot of abuse over the weekend, Denis, and it'll be interesting to see how often we see it this weekend, is the is giving up the puck out, as we say. You know, Wexford did it quite a lot against Galway, and as we were just outlining the skills of hurling goalkeepers today, it seems utterly nonsensical to give the likes of Nicky Quaid or a Mark Fanning or anybody else an extra 30 yards of range for a pinpoint pass. It just, I don't know whether it was down to the first weekend of the championship and they hadn't quite figured, like, it just, to me, seems like a nonsensical tactic, full stop.
Yeah. And like, as Dalo was pointing out, Nicky Quaid, like, really is, he's so fundamental to the way Limerick play. Now, one other thing I would say about that, though, like, and it was a bit like Kilkenny when they had three monsters in their half forward line and didn't matter where the puck out landed. There was an element of that with Nicky Quaid. I would love to see Nicky Quaid working with the Cork half forward line and trying to find a you know, no, seriously, you know what I mean? So it's like Nicky Quaid, if nothing is on, he knows he can put the ball in his zone. And what often happens with Limerick is Morrissey and Hegarty will both be in the same place under a puck out. So, and if a ball hits the ground, they're going to win it. But what would Nicky do with trying to find someone in the Cork half forward line to make a kind of a connection and to make a puck out win? Like, I was at the game on Saturday night in Wexford Park, and like what I did find interesting actually, and I don't know, I didn't see much of it I didn't see all the Sunday games Sunday night, but what was interesting I thought was the variety in Galway's play in terms of long and short. Like, given Henry's background, Henry wouldn't be, I imagine, in favour of all these short hand passes and quick transfers and running off the shoulder. There was plenty of ball that went in long and diagonal, and the guy was expecting it, and it was well choreographed, but it was long ball at the same time. And there was just a nice variety about it, I thought. And like Limerick have that as well. They have all the variety, and they don't have to go short, or they don't have to go long. It's whatever's on.
Yeah, he regularly 100%. Finds Gillan with puck outs. Like Gillan will make that 30-yard dart, and they'll leave the space. And yeah.
Just get your thoughts on the conceding the puck out, Dalo. Where are you on it?
Yeah, I suppose you You have to serve your destination as best you possibly can. So for some teams, like Cork were doing it, but your Limerick were shoved up on them, and Patrick Collins just had nowhere to go. Like that was the reality of it. He went long, it was coming back at him. He went short, they were turned back. He had to go back. They had to go back to him again, and then he had to poke it long. And like the second goal, like you could say, came from twice. Tim O'Mahony and Sean O'Donoghue looked up the field, and honestly, Mikey, there was no movement, there was no space, and they tried. You know, Mahoney went back to Donoghue. Donoghue looked up. I could clearly see her right in front of the box where we were. Donoghue looked up, and then he said, "I better try and go shorter route." So that was intercepted. He's gone from Gillane. Kyle gets it, gives it inside, second goal. So look, yeah, it is a problem for Cork, and it'll be a problem for a lot of teams. And even we'll get onto it, I know, in a minute, that where Clare play Peter Duggan, you know, and will John Conlon, and he probably obviously will be centre back, where we could have maybe, if we had a more recognised centre back, which we have in Conor Cleary, but we probably don't have a full back then. So where Conor can't play 3 and 6, so probably John Conlon will be 6. But if we had, we could have Peter Duggan on one wing and John Conlon on the other wing. And now there's a lovely luxury for Eibhear Quilligan to be able to do. But will the makeup be such that we might have Peter Duggan on one wing and maybe a Tony Kelly moving from the centre? So that's, I think it's very much down to what you have to shoot at as well, with short puck outs long. But you have to vary it anyway, Mike.
That was admirable shoehorning at Clare in before we officially get to them. But congratulations, Dalo. Before we do move on to that game, because it is an intriguing game. I'll just quickly get your predictions then. Rory, how do you see Saturday evening going?
Limerick at home. They're back to their best. Picked them to win Munster. I think they'll win again.
Dennis?
Yeah, I agree. I think Limerick will win.
Yeah. Anthony?
Sneaky fiver on the draw, Mikey. And I always would call out these ones now, but I just don't know if it'd be that, you know, rip roaring, and might, as I said earlier, it might just take on a life of its own, because there's a fair rivalry building up between these two.
Yeah. I like to be stupid with my predictions, but I find it very hard to bet against a home win here as well. Okay, so on to matters of Semple Stadium then. Dalo, I think what's interesting to a lot of people from outside is the return of the fifth Beatle, who supposedly has bulked up a lot. Shane O'Donnell, he's his year out with concussion problems. He's spent a lot of it in the gym, and for those of us who haven't seen this transformation, it sounds intriguing. You know, the nippy, elusive inside, you know, corner forward who's who's going to be a bit more of a target man, a bit more of a bullet, a bear on the square, is he?
Well, look, I mean, obviously, since he first broke onto the scene 9 years ago, the guy has bulked up every year, like, and you saw some of the tackles he put in over the last few years. So I mean, probably the reason he got the concussion is he's as brave as a lion. Like he'll just put his body on the line. And yeah, I haven't seen him, I haven't met him, like, or anything like that. And we will not, like, trying to find out about intercounty teams at the moment. It's just like it'd be easier break in and out of Alcatraz at the moment. Like, so I can't get word. Talk is that his hurling is really sharp. No, that'll be just adjudicated on Sunday, 2:00 though. You know, you can be all this sharp against Galway in a challenge match and in-house games. And O'Donnell's touch is very good, and seemingly is a bit stronger, but it'll be all down to just judged on Sunday. I mean, like, if it doesn't go well and Clare lose, it'll be, how could you pick him after only coming back into the panel 5 or 6 weeks earlier? But if it goes well, sure, well done, Brian. You'll let him stay in Dublin there for a few months. He freshened up. He got he just, you know, he'll give you everything, of course, and he'll be his game. He'll need a break or two. But I'd never like to be a defender marking a Shane O'Donnell type player anyway, Mike. He's in your face, and he also has nothing in his head, only a green flag.
Yeah, Denis, it wouldn't be like the Clare hurling public to second guess a manager, would it?
No. Just on that point, before I forget, there is one top hurling county at the moment whose sessions are open.
Oh yeah,
but I'm not telling you until I get in first. So there is one top. There is one top team that you can just walk in, and it's fantastic. And anyway.
Tease.
Sorry, what was the question again about?
Were they playing the John McDonough?
No, they're not playing John McDonough. They're not playing John McDonough. Absolutely not.
The Dubs.
Top team, well, maybe them now, but I haven't heard.
In my 6 years, Dennis, I never got to lock the gate. I was only hoping a few would come in.
Oh,
that's a fact. Never ever did we lock the gate. Honestly, we could be down in Round Towers, we could be out in Castleknock. Carnell will be wide open.
They don't put out a sandwich board trying to get them in.
Dog.
I didn't really have a question for you there, Denis, but I do now. The question would be, I suppose, Clare have the luxury, we mentioned it on Tuesday here, they have the luxury of coming in, 6 days after everybody else, and they've seen what Tip have to offer, and they might have been unpleasantly surprised given the showing that the Tipperary did put up in Waterford. And I would argue that Clare are something of an unknown quantity. It's hard to kind of nail them down during the league, I would say. And, they've obviously got a significant personnel to come in as well since the league. So it's hard to know what we're going to get from Clare, but the fact that they're going under a radar would suit them, you'd imagine.
Absolutely. And actually, Ciaran Whelan made a good point on Tuesday that they were able to come in and, last year against Waterford, first round, hit the ground running. So, they didn't need to get warmed up with round robin games, and they were flying straight away. So, Brian Lonan's an experienced guy. He's been around the scene a long time between Fitzgibbon and the whole lot. He's well able to get guys ready. Like Dalo, I would expect to see a stronger, clear lineup for Sunday than any time during the league, or probably any time last year. Given the players that that they were missing last year. Look, I think it's fascinating. I mean, Tipperary probably surprised all of us a bit last Sunday. They probably surprised themselves. I was talking to one guy yesterday from Tip who said they were much happier coming home than they were going down, even though they were beaten. So, they weren't expecting anything, and they got more than they expected. So, look, it's fascinating. It's just another game in this round robin that is so hard to call, and you're probably better off having a fiver and a greyhound in the all tomorrow night than trying to work out these games, So, it's just something to look forward to.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough one to call, Rory, and I suppose we had our disciplinary issues talking about the football, and we have one in the hurling, and it's Tommy Dunn, the Tipperary coach, has had a 3-month ban proposed, we understand, for altercation with the referee at half time of the defeat to Waterford, which would mean he wouldn't be able to be involved in training or matches until the date of the All-Ireland final, where Tipperary to make it if a 3-month ban was actually held up.
How everybody in the Donegal Armagh situation that wanted to get off got off for what the incident that happened there, and for Tommy Dunn, who, look, I don't really know Tommy. I've met him on a couple of occasions. He was in as a special guest on 2 occasions on the Sunday game, and I had the pleasure to meet him on those. So, but I wouldn't really know him intimately. But my experiences of him then is he was a pretty mild-mannered, amiable gentleman, really, like in all dealings. And it just, I know this may be an old hackneyed old cliche that it would seem out of character, whatever language that he may have used. I'd be shocked if it was, to the extent that it merits or to serve 3 months. I mean, I think he was probably within his rights to question the decision around the strike by Mikey Kiley, whether there was intent or not. For him to get upset about it, I think probably showed that, certainly in his head, that there was he had some justification for approaching the ref about it. What he might have said, we don't know. I just think 3-month suspension for that, given the fact that everybody in Donegal and Armagh have pretty much gotten off, bar the 2 lads that accepted it. I mean, that's like, what are we at here?
Yeah,
to me, I don't know. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah. And we don't know the details on this, as is the want of the GAA. Disciplinary matters are usually pretty grey.
I'd be ringing
before, during, and after.
Yeah, but if I was Tommy, Mikey, I'd be ringing the Armagh County Board and finding out who their legal team was anyway.
How's Frank fixed?
He's not in good form.
Dalo, getting in the ear of the officials is kind of part of the job for people, managers and backroom team, and I suppose you again would know better than any of us here the line and where it is and what can't be crossed. But this is very unusual. To hear that a 3-month ban is being proposed it's not off the charts, but it's very unusual.
Yeah, Mike, I'm kind of in shock myself. I'm not going to deny here Tommy Dunn is a friend of mine. we were down in Cork in the studio, obviously, analysing the game. We see Tommy gets a yellow and a red coming out. So I said, obviously, there was some bit of verbals. Don't know, can't believe, like, that this probably thought of one game, you know, sit in the sand. I marked Tommy Dunn for 4 or 5 years. I'd say we had good, pleasant exchanges. Good, great hurler, really clean player. Could mix it with no bother. I managed against him when he was with Clonryan. He came up and coached Clarecastle, my club, for a year. And then he was with me in 13 and 14 when Dublin won the Leinster title as a coach. Beside me on the line, Mike, for me, as long as I'd known Tommy on a sideline, this would be completely out of character for the man. Okay, obviously, he's a passionate Tipperary man and would be questioning, like, when he saw blood streaming down Seamus Kennedy's face, I'd say he would be questioning why was there no inquiry with the umpires or stuff like that on the issue. But I'd be shocked if Tommy said something that warranted 3 months. To be honest with you, I would be. It's one word against another. You know that tunnel in Walsh Park, as you go in there, underground, I've often wondered how fellas have come out the other side of it. So, like, fellas could be shouting at each other going in that tunnel. And I've been in that situation with Clare teams and Dublin teams and indeed club teams. And you wouldn't know who's saying what to you. So I don't know if it was Johnny Murphy will have his own version of this, and we'll have to wait for that, I suppose. But I'd say Tommy would be distraught. Like, Tommy, that'd be completely out of character for Tommy, for me.
You could be called as a character witness. You could be up in Croke Park Hotel yet, Dalo. You could be a character witness.
I'd say you could call half the country for a character witness for Tommy Dunn.
Just on, and just on the matter of officials. I mean, I know, like, look, I know Dalo might necessarily agree after the 2013 semi-final. I would obviously have a different view. I think James Owens is a fine referee. I think the cojones on him to make the hard call in that 2019 final when Richie Hogan should have been sent off and was. I think that took incredible mental strength to do that, because that's not an easy thing to do, to send a lad off in an All-Ireland final. But I did find the appointment an odd one. Like, did they really need to put him, like, back into the very fixture that caused such a furore last year? I do not understand that appointment at all. There's 100 million matches on this weekend. They could have appointed 4 or 5 different referees to this fixture, yet they put James Owens back into the very one that caused so much hassle. I just thought that was an odd one.
What do you think? It is a little bit odd, Denis, is it, to put James Owens there? He was following the letter of the law, supposedly, but like it was
Mike?
Huh?
What?
Okay.
Okay. Nearer to the Limerick Road, is it?
It's to say it was within the parameters, but but in the end, it was the ruling that kind of made an ass of it all.
It just caused the imaginary line now halfway between the post and the corner flag, at least.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, Denis, but I'm sure James will be water off his ducks back. He don't become an inter-county referee and stay one for so long without not really being too bothered, I suppose, by the two teams that you're officiating.
Yeah, James Owens now has been around at the top level for a long time. I honestly believed his career as an elite referee was over when he failed to send off Austin Gleeson in the All-Ireland semi-final in 2017, when Austin Gleeson clearly pulled the helmet off a Cork player, and that was a straight red card offence at the time, and other players had been sent off for interference at helmets and masks and so on, including Podge Collins, I think, maybe a year earlier or whatever, in a game in Ennis, a Clare Wexford game. And when he didn't make that call at the time, and when he was invited forcibly, well, no, I'm not saying forcibly, when he was given 1 or 2 opportunities afterwards to reflect by Croke Park on his decision, and he stuck with his original decision. And, you know, everyone's thrilled to see Gleeson playing the final and so on and so forth, but that's not the point. The point is he didn't make that call. Now, they obviously had a lot of confidence in him as an elite referee. They're not overburdened with guys of the required standard. It's the same guys that keep on getting appointed to big games, and he's one of them. And there's literally 2 or 3 that keep on getting appointed to big games. So they actually need, the GA and Croke Park need someone like Owens not to fail, because they have so few options, and they need guys like him to be strong, and they need guys like him to perform on big days. So I would say, to be honest, they would have had no compunction about making this appointment. They have such confidence in Owens as an elite referee that they would expect him to handle this And to be honest, I would too, because I thought he was finished. 5 years ago, I thought he was finished. I did not think he would come back, or that they would have him back after making such a bad call in that All-Ireland semi-final in 2017. And as Rory pointed out, that was an incredibly brave call in the 2019. Well, he did the right thing in the 2019 All-Ireland final. And we can all think of other incidents over the years where referees took the path of least resistance rather than making the call that they had to make.
Yeah, that's true. So all that swirling around Dalo, your crowd quite like a trip to Thurles. How do you see it going?
I think we've a good chance. I'd nearly rather, Mike, like you're saying, someone said it anyway amongst the three of you, that tip supporters were pleasantly surprised and all that, with the trip to Waterford. And I'd say like Colin Bonner and Tommy and etc. would have been nearly insulted with that attitude. They went down there to win that game and showed in the performance. And they gave all. And I'm nearly preferring that they did give all, and Clare got a good look at what they're potentially, the likes of the Marquos, the likes of the Craig Morgans, the Dylan Quirks, all these guys. They're great players. They have 9 All-Irelands, 20 All-Irelands, 21 All-Irelands. And that Clare are under no illusion now, that the Tip are if they were beating 12 or 13 points in a one-sided game, that all of a sudden Clare would be kind of, not hot favourites, but favourites maybe. So I think it's good for Clare, in actual fact that we're going in now, that we know that this crowd, like Noel McGrath, his form again last week at Clare, have to get an absolute handle on all these guys. So I just think Clare are more settled than people think. Aidan Mccarthy is a terrible loss. I would have said nearly the second worst loss to Tony Kelly would be Aidan McCarthy after last year, because for me, he had really found his feet at that level and top class player. He's an awful loss. On the positive side of it, Dermot Ryan is back, and he's huge for us as well, right half back. And like, you could have picked the goalie and 5 of the backs straight away, and it's probably a straight shootout for left half back between Jack Brown or David McInerney, I'd say. So then when you look at the forwards, like O'Donnell will probably play, Duggan will play, Ryan Taylor will play, Kelly will obviously play.
Is Mark Rogers fit?
Mark Rogers is out, so he'll be back all right, but he's out for this one. But like, you can feel, Jason McCarthy will play, David Fitzgerald will probably play. So it's not, will it be Ian Galvin, will it be Shane Meehan, I'd say, for the last spot. So, and young Meehan has shown great form in the league and played well in the 20s match, carrying a bit of a niggle. And young Galvin obviously is a fine player now at this stage, at this level, and scored the goal that beat Tip 3 years ago, was it? For the first time ever in Championship Hurling down there. So Clare are not as an unknown quantity, Mikey, as you're making out anyway. So yeah, I'd give Clare a big chance. But
I just meant more in terms of the return. There's a few personnel coming back in, which obviously have an impact.
But we know them, like Dougie was away and COVID came, and how sharp is Dougie still, he was coming on for bits and pieces. Seemingly played very well in a challenge match against Galway. But again, I can't find out any proper details about that. But I imagine he'll play. Whether he'll play full or play wing is the question there. And if I was ever Culligan, I'd like him on the wing, but maybe Brian might like him on the edge of the square as well. James Quigley acquitted himself very well at full back for Tip last week on Stephen Bennett. But Peter Duggan is a different kind of a quandary then, It's the big fetcher and a power man, as opposed to Bennett, all slick, all touch, all movement, and so he might want to pose that question for a rookie enough full back still, albeit that the Killadangan man is he's a good bit of stuff now.
Yeah. Who's going to win it, Dalo?
I think Clare might win it, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have a chance, yeah.
Okay. Dennis?
I fancy Tip marginally, but I wouldn't. I'd be more inclined to back the draw in this game actually than the game on Saturday night, to be honest.
Rory?
Yeah, I do. I have a sneaky feeling for Tip. I think there's more at stake for them. I think if they lose, I think their season is pretty much done and dusted. I know 2 wins will probably still get you out of the round robin, but I think they will be up against it big time, knowing that they've got to go to the Gaelic Grounds and knowing how difficult they have. The difficulties they've had with Limerick in the past. So I think there's just too much at stake for Tip. And I'd be worried as well. I mean, Dalo mentioned John Conlon will probably play 6. Does that mean then that he matches up with Noel McGrath? John Conlon, you're going to need a man marker for Noel McGrath. John Conlon is not a man marking centre back. He's just, So then
I'd say there'd be someone
Jack
detailed
Brown,
for that job now, Rory.
Jack, you're looking at Jack Brown or Dave McInerney, and then
you're probably looking at one of the two midfielders. I would maybe suspect Jason McCarthy might be handed that.
He'll sit back, and you're looking at a +1, but they'll definitely have to do something there. I'm looking forward to seeing the clash of what will probably be Conor Cleary versus Mark Keogh. That would be quite interesting, a bit of a two towers job. But I think, look, Tipperary at home, more at stake for them. I'd give them a slight nod, but I think it'll be tight.
Yeah, I wonder whether the coming in a week late might actually be a disadvantage at the end of Tip have had the run out, but we'll wait to see. I'll back Tip too. Just
there'll be no shadow boxing in this one. I know, Mikey.
No, there certainly won't be. No, there'll be
full-blooded.
These won't be worried about meeting each other 3 times in championship.
The losers of this one certainly will be kind of.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to Leinster and really one game, lads. I mentioned it on Tuesday, kind of bemoaning the fact that the 6-team Leinster Championship, Denis, it kind of has us looking every week. We're kind of looking at 2 fixtures and saying, well, Kilkenny should beat Laois and Galway will beat Westmeath. And now I'm just saying Laois, giving Laois some kind of a nod. Just I don't know why exactly. I think they're both. Let's be honest, they're clear cut home victories there, so which leaves us with kind of one game to look at. I don't know how you feel about it. To me, I get the point of giving teams a chance to develop, but in terms of a competition and as trying to keep the Leinster Championship in some way on parity with the Munster Championship, I just don't think it's a great look.
No, over the years, Mikey, they've tried to you're always really conscious of trying to keep the teams that are on the fringe of the elite in the county and in the on the fringe of Aidan Mccarthy as it is now. But going back years, there was 4 or 5 teams that they were trying to keep just on the edge and trying to keep them in. There used to be a Leinster round robin before there was a Leinster champion. You kind of go far from Leinster. So they were always trying things. Remember, there used to be they tried for a couple of summers, kind of a midsummer round robin for beating teams. Cork were in that one year as a kind of having lost a couple of games. And look, all these things were well intentioned, but like as you said, will it do Laois or Westmeath much good to be? I don't know is the answer. I spoke to Shane O'Brien recently. He was in charge of Westmeath for the last few years, and they got some hidings in Division 1, and he struggled. They really had to dig hard to find positives. And anyway, that's kind of a bit of a tangent to your question. Like, I don't really think it benefits them, to be honest. But there is a tail in the Leinster Championship. But then, having said that, I mean, if you look, last round robin we had in Leinster, 4 teams finished on the same number of points, and Galway were knocked out on scoring difference. So, like, I'm sure all the teams are aware of that. So that almost puts more pressure on teams like Westmeath and Laois when the other teams are thinking, crikey. Like, when Galway reflected on that summer, they didn't beat Carlow by enough. Yeah. That was the thing, right? They didn't beat Carlow by enough. So the other teams all beat Carlow by 10 points more than Galway did. So Denis, that's not a great place for Laois and Westmeath to be in.
Yeah, but Denis, there is a rule in Dublin GA anyway, I know, because we got relegated. My club got relegated 1 year out of it, whereby if teams finish level on points, it's scoring difference between the teams that finish level on points as opposed to overall scoring difference. Sure. And I think that has to come in. That rule has to come into the Leinster Championship, because if you're knocking the bejesus out of a team early doors, and then they get slightly dispirited towards the back end, they've thrown their towel in, you're not meeting the same challenge, and there's a disparity then between the paucity of the challenge that you face, which can obviously affect then the tallies that you're getting on the scoreboard. So I'm just, what do you think? I mean,
that's a fair point. It actually wouldn't have helped that year, because literally 4 teams had the same number of points. They couldn't. But actually, in the Heineken Cup, when the Italian teams used to be in the pools, they came up with some kind of a formula about that, because, as you say, like, there was teams were kind of beating up on the Italian team, and it was distorting the rankings. So they had some kind of formula for that. But like, look, Laois did really well last week, and Laois have shown that they can pop up with performances and outcomes when we don't expect it.
Yeah. But that's why I'm kind of almost not giving them a hope, but saying that game could be competitive for 50 minutes, 55 minutes. Because we've already had a draw between two of the main contenders, Dalo. So Dublin's trip to Wexford Park on Saturday evening is, you could say either team, whoever gets a win here is probably not sitting pretty, but will be feeling pretty confident about getting one of the 3 top spots.
I'd say they're in the top spot. Like the top 3 spots, I'd say they're there. Like I can't see where they'd be tripped up. Like I don't think.
We might have said the same thing in 2019 as well. There's always potential pitfalls.
I know, but I'd say like if the Dubs go down and win, and they beat Westmeath, which you can't see that not being a win. Sure, they can't. Wexford, unless they do something. But yeah, I suppose. Look, it could still. Wexford is still formidable, but like I'd say the winner of this is in the 3. I'd say, Mikey.
Yeah. A word on Dublin, then Dalo. I always like to get your insight. Donal Burke, just like his importance, like it's 6 points from play in a championship match. I don't care who the opposition is, on top of 7 from frees. A 13-point haul is something else, and he just seems to have kind of reached another level. I don't know what do you think he has in the last year or so?
Yeah, he was always a fine player, like underage. That even when I was there, I remember seeing underage games in Parnell, and you'd pick him out top left-hand striker. He's great. He's a very good player. Crucial to them. Interestingly enough, I think a big one is Rian McBride is back available, and I think that's a huge.
He was suspended, Dalo, was he?
Yeah, like because he's the centre forward man. I think Sutcliffe had a great game against Laois because maybe McBride wasn't. Sutcliffe had a great league, like overall, and I think that'll be crucial to them if they have a chance that half forward line, including Donal Burke. So I think that he's crucial. So a few more need to step up though, and look, I would have tipped Dublin to be in the 3. I'd be kind of worried now after watching the Laois game, I have to say. They need to deliver, but they're capable of delivering. Sometimes they let you down, and in my time as well, when you expect it most. And sometimes then when they're kind of, people are saying, Wexford, that was a great draw against Galway, and they were out of it for a long time and all this, and the Dubs will be good to go down and defy that. And I think it's all dependent on where Lee Chin is. And I thought, I suppose, when I was making the prediction that Lee Chin wouldn't be available for the first 2, maybe 3 rounds. Now, we saw the effect Lee Chin had on the whole thing last Saturday. I mean, it was immense when he came on. Like, so if Chin is good to go for 50 minutes, you probably might be giving the edge now to Wexford. But Dubs are up to the Kilkenny game, and that was so. I was doing co-commentary that night, and just the crowd that was in like that night, and I can remember those nights. Let's say when I was in charge, those Parnell nights, and you were really saying it's going to be electric tonight. Now stuck into this crowd, and just Kilkenny blew them away. Like, and the form hasn't been good since, and it wasn't good last Saturday. So, and it could be very costly if things stay tight. Like if this was a draw now, and that scoring difference against Laois could be very costly. So, yeah, they have to show something that they didn't show against Kilkenny or against Laois. So I'd be hoping that would be for being involved. That might have a graph from obviously. They'd have to deliver that, and they have to go down and win. I'd say that's the bottom line for Matty and the lads.
Yeah, there's a few interesting battles, Denis, there kind of around the middle, I guess. Here, well, you mentioned the half-forward line of Dublin. For Wexford, like it's hard to overstate the importance of Paddy Foley to kind of how Wexford play. And himself, Damian Reck was also, he stood up against Galway, and as I mentioned here on Tuesday, Galway are a hard team to stand up against because they're very physical, and they're big men, and the Wexford half-back line, I think, did a decent job there. And then obviously if Lee Chin plays, he's going to add some ballast to Wexford half-forward line that, in my opinion, was a bit lightweight. Oisín Foley, it's probably, if you're not championship debutant, it's definitely, it was his first time kind of starting a game, I would say. Liam McGovern's a great player, but then Charlie McGuckin, I would say the Wexford half-forward line, in my opinion, might have been their weakest line. If you take Chin out of it, you put Chin into it, and all of a sudden it's transformed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And whether, as Dalo was saying, whether he'll be able to start or whether they prefer to bring him on again. I mean, what was so damaging for Wexford last Saturday was how passive they were in the first half. Like the complete lack of, even though, as you say, Galway are a huge team, much bigger than Wexford, really, man for man. But there was just no aggression. There was just no kind of intensity and ferocity that you would expect from a team playing at home in the championship. And once they found that in the second half, it was a different proposition. And plus they dropped some. You mentioned about the Wexford halfbacks not doing too bad. Like Galway had the half-back line heavily manned. It was like triple glazing, and they were dropping the ball down on top of it, in the first half especially, and getting no back, and it was just crazy stuff. And they had McDonald inside on his own, isolated with 2 or 3 guys around. Actually, McDonald was heroic. The way he was, the way he took on.
He performed admirably considering there was no one in the same air code as him.
Yeah, I don't know who the host broadcasters gave man of the match to, but I gave it to McDonald because I thought he was fighting 3 guys on his own, including Dahi Burke, who was a hell of a man to fight, and to get the goal that kind of brought them back into it and so on. But I'm sure they would have learned a lot from that. Like, Darragh Egan's a smart young coach, and it was a big day for him too, his first championship match, and I'm sure there'll be a different proposition on Saturday.
And Denis, like that's the mouth-watering one. Like you'd expect them to be more advanced back at home again, learned a bit from last week, and would give McDonald more support. But McDonald and O'Donnell's clash on the edge of the square, fascinating one. Like he got a fair bit of change out of Dahi Burke now, which probably you wouldn't have felt going in.
Exactly.
So, but is O'Donnell even a more informed full-back now than Dahi? Jesus, that could be crucial to the whole thing. Who'll win that one?
Yeah, I would put Conor McDonald down as should we say a streaky player, a confidence player, and he'd have taken some confidence from that first half because, as you said, he probably scored a par when it wouldn't have been expected, and then in the second half, like he was a lot more influential, and he scored a goal, Rory, that kind of defied physics slightly. I'm not sure. I was at the other end of the field. I didn't see it until I saw it on social media afterwards, and I still can't quite fathom how it went in.
Superb. I mean, I think, and Denis nailed it there in terms of man of the match. Plus, I think his comment in his column the following day in the Sunday Times about a team winning the draw was a great comment. I loved it in that, I do think Wexford won that draw, and I think we said to you, when we were kind of previewing the championships, Wexford are very much a momentum side. I think the one thing that was noticeable for me last Saturday, no, I haven't said that, it was hard to say, I know the attendance popped up 10,000, whatever. It's a long way for Galway to travel, and I accept that. I'd imagine it's going to be a far bigger crowd this time around. There'll be a much more raucous atmosphere. The Dubs will bring down numbers. I'm sure the Wexford crowd will come out now and support. The weather forecast this weekend is meant to be good. I think that'll add to it as well. And I think they will have, Wexford are very much a momentum side. I think the first half performance really kind of struck me as a side that, got a bit of a shot to the jaw of Waterford and maybe had their confidence knocked out of them a little bit. And it just took them a while to kind of find their feet again. And I think the last 10 or 15 minutes showed that there's plenty in them. And I think Dublin will have it all to do down there on Saturday night.
Dalo, how do you see the result? You sound confident about Dublin, but are you would you be putting the housekeeping money on it?
No, because I would have. I tell you now, coming up to that Kilkenny League game, I was confident Dublin being the 3. Just think probably, when I saw the effect of Chin last Saturday, I really was thinking if he is able to go for, as Denis said, they might probably hold him. It's hard to call now this one again. I think if the Dubs show up, likes of Conor Burke and Crummy midfield now, they could dominate midfield. If they come down nice and angry that we're not going well, we need to start delivering. Paddy Smith and O'Donnell then are solid central defenders. So need more inside. Ronan Hayes will have to deliver a bit more, but is he lacking support in there? You'd say Eamon Dillon starting didn't go well the last time, so maybe Eamon is going to be held, popped in the last 15 minutes. Trolley are a great man to get a goal. But still think if Chin is able to play, Wexford probably. And the other factor, I think Niall Cochran is involved there with Dara. Niall knows those Dublin fellas like the back of his hand, and he will know exactly the type of player to mark the type of player, including club mates of his and all that, So give a slight edge to Wexford at this stage. But wouldn't be surprised now if Dublin went in and turned them over.
Dennis, are you any more sure on this one than the 2 lads?
No, I'm still thinking about the grounds and the all tomorrow night. There's only 6 of them out of the traps. But look, I'm glad, Mikey, we don't do previews anymore. I'm 32 years. I was 30 years tormented by previews. We don't do them anymore. And you know something? I'm not even going to preview this match. Forget about it. It could be 80. Lord knows.
But they will be all in, though, Dennis.
You will be all in. You will be all in.
Yeah, I think Wexford are going to win because I'm, like I said, the glass half full part of my personality is reserved for Hurling. The footballers get the other part of my personality. Unfortunately, for them.
You tipped Offaly before we came on to win the football match, did you?
I did, yeah. I'm sorry. I know. I'm a realist.
The good thing about Wexford
and I hope
Park
I'm wrong. I love being wrong.
The good thing about Wexford Park on Saturday night is Fergal Horgan is reffing, so he's not one to be dishing out yellow cards and red cards and black cards, but he might need them. He might need a few of them on Saturday night.
This will be worry enough, I'd say.
There'll be plenty of timber dished out. And
you'll probably be able to stand over a free for 14 seconds, though.
Yeah. Rory, without going overboard, I hope you're right, because I was really surprised by Wexford on Saturday. I really was expecting something different and something, way more aggression and so on. There was a Fergal Horgan referee Wexford and Kilkenny in a round robin game in Wexford Park 2 or 3 years ago, and there was flaking galore. And I think probably the lads in the Sunday game were saying, "Geez, this is great and all the rest of it." But Fergal Horgan would have had a serious word in his ear after that game. Didn't get a game for the rest of the championship, if I remember. And the next time he came out, he gave something like 40 odd frees between the same two teams. So let's see how that works out now on Saturday. But let's hope there was that bite because it wasn't there for so long last Saturday.
But Denis, you're not I would say then maybe straight afterwards on Saturday evening in the dressing room, you've Darragh Egan coming in saying, and fellas are hugging maybe or clapping each other in the back for getting a draw out against the odds all game. I'd say he'd be catching one of them by the throat and saying, "You think that was a good draw?" Yeah. I think it was an absolute SHITE draw, because that they didn't play well at all, and he'll be hammering them this week, I'd say, for that. So that's a nice place to be now as a manager. Absolutely. You got the result, which is a big result with Galway. We all fancying Galway all year, and yet you have the players where you want them all week.
I can never remember a 10-point game ending up in a draw. That was a 10-point game. We'll say, I know there was a lot of focus on the last couple of frees, and obviously, that was whatever. That was what the outcome hinged on in the end. But that was a 10-point game for Galway at their ease. They were so far in control, so much in control. There's so many chances. They shouldn't even, Galway shouldn't even be thinking about the last 5 minutes. That game should have been over 15, 20 minutes ago.
It was a 5-point deficit down to a 4-point deficit, up to a 5-point deficit, down to a 4-point deficit for the entire second half until the last 5 or 6 minutes. So, yeah, it really shouldn't have happened, but I'm delighted that it did. Right, lads, thank you very much. I enjoyed that chat. Thank you to Denis and to Dalo and to Rory, of course, and to Whelo and to Damian earlier. And we'll be back on Monday to revel in 2 Wexford wins with any luck. Good luck. We'll chat to you then.
From this, how much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it.